All right, so the next loop that we have is the while loop. This loop will check if the criteria or the condition is true, and if it is true, the body within the block is ran. Now let's write something out to make for this to make more sense. So we're going to create a variable called counter, and this is going to be an int, and it's going to be equal to, let's make it 5. We're going to make a while loop, which is just while, open parentheses, and then we're going to have the block of code that we're going to put within. Now, when I mean the condition has to be true, the thing that we place inside this parentheses has to be true for this loop to continue going on. So the condition I want to set is I want this while loop to continue as long as this counter is greater than 0. Now, if it is less than 0, or if it's equal to 0, then that means that we want this to end. So if we print and then counter, so we can see how this affects it, and then we do counter minus minus, so each time this runs, it will subtract 1 from counter. We run this, we will see, boom, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it just keeps going, you know, from the top to bottom, because it's running in a loop. But once it gets to 0, we got to stop because it's not greater than 0. So that's a while loop. It can be useful. Like when we did the little game before with the calculator, we could place that inside of this while loop, and if the person types in, you know, end, we can have a flag that triggers you know, a boolean that makes it true or false, and we can end that while loop. So there's a lot of things you could do with a while loop. All right, so when you're running the while loop, the condition has to be true for it to run, but you also got to be careful that there is an ending point, because you can have instances where this continue running forever if this is never, you know, changed, or if it never changed to false. So for this example, I have it in a very extreme case where I'm legit passing true as the condition to this while loop. But this is just to show you guys what can happen if you don't have an ending point to this while loop. So if I run this, as you guys can see, it's just continue going and going and going, and this is what you call an infinite loop, because it's going to keep going and going and going, because the while loop never ends. It's never going to be false. So when writing loops, you always got to be careful, and in this case I can just press stop, but you always got to be careful because this can continue going and going and going, and if this is a real application, this can crash your code. So because at one point the counter is going to overflow. So always be careful. Always make sure that the while loop can eventually turn or can eventually end, because you have a thing called infinite loops.